Hello, Hunters, and welcome back to Super Fan Natural. Hunters, I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you watch Supernatural, there's a good chance that you enjoy other horror media. From monster movies to slasher flicks to darker TV like X-Files and Buffy, I'd wager that a good chunk of you have seen a fair few frightful flicks in your time. And I'm not the only one who thinks so. The showrunners themselves seem to feel the same, as during the course of the show's run, we got guest appearances by more than a few actors who are well known in the horror industry. Most of these appearances were cameos. However, there were a few with reoccurring roles, and with Halloween just around the corner, I thought it would be fun to go through and point out some of the frightful familiar faces that appeared in the show. There's no better place to start this list than with the guy whose character is so famous, I had to put him in the thumbnail. Robert Englund, aka Freddy Krueger. Freddy is one of the icons of horror, so it makes sense that the show would at least try to get him in an episode, and eventually they succeeded, as Englund would make a quick appearance in the Season 6 episode, Appointment in Samsara. He plays a morally ambiguous doctor who performs shady back-alley near-death experiences for cash, which, yeah, that feels about right. He's only in the one episode, and only gets a few minutes of screen time, but it's still fun to have a cameo. Englund is arguably the most famous slasher actor to appear in the show, but he wasn't the first. That honor goes to his character's mortal enemy, Jason Voorhees. Jason has been played by a bunch of different actors over the years, but the one that got to square up against Freddy was a guy named Ken Kurtzinger. Kurtzinger may not have as much name recognition as other actors on this list, but he's been all over horror. Jason was by far his most famous role, but he also had roles in Wrong Turn 3, Joyride 3, Ace Ventura When Nature Calls, and a few years after the showdown with Freddy, he would appear in the very first season of Supernatural, playing a member of the psychotic Bender family. I've read that Eric Kripke wanted to have a Jason crossover episode, but just couldn't make it work, but at least he got one of the men behind the hockey mask to show up. Since we're talking about Freddy vs. Jason, let's discuss another cast member who showed up in Supernatural. Actually, there's quite a bit of crossover between the show and the movie. A lot of that comes down to bit roles, but there was one more that might stand out to horror fans. Even if you don't recognize Katharine Isabelle's name, you might recognize her face, since she's been in a lot of stuff. Her most famous character is the werewolf girl Ginger from Ginger Snaps. But honestly, if you watch shows that were filmed in Vancouver in the 90s or early 2000s, there's a good chance she'll pop up for at least one episode. In Supernatural, she got a 2-episode run as the psychic girl Ava Wilson in the Season 2 episodes Hunted and All Hell Breaks Loose Part 1. Katharine Isabelle wasn't the only Ginger Snap star to show up in the show. In fact, you could argue that the real star of the movie was Ginger's sister Bridget, played by Emily Perkins. Perkins doesn't have quite as much horror cred as other names in this video, but I couldn't leave her off the list. Not only did she star in one of the most popular werewolf movies, she also played the kid version of Beverly in the It miniseries from the 1990s, so yeah, I'd say it's worthy of mentioning. Fans of the show will know her as Becky Rosen, Supernatural superfan, and woman who may have banged God. While we're on the subject of famous females in horror, let's move on to one of the most well-known women to play an iconic horror character. As a show, Supernatural is all about demons and exorcisms, so it only makes sense that they would have a guest appearance by the poster child of exorcisms, Linda Blair, best known for her role as Regan/Pazuzu in The Exorcist. In Supernatural, Blair doesn't play a demon. Instead, she played Diana Ballard, a detective who captures the Winchesters in the Season 2 episode Usual Suspects. She doesn't deal with demons, but she does have to face off against a ghost and a crooked cop, and she ends up being one of the few characters who actually believes the boys when weird ghost shit happens. The episode avoids making a bunch of Exorcist references, but there is one that squeaks by at the very end. If you've ever watched this episode and wondered why Dean asks about pea soup at the end, yeah, that's a reference to the movie, specifically the projectile vomit scene. Next up, we've got a guest appearance that's really easy to miss because we only get the actor's voice. For years, fans wanted Supernatural to cross over with something, be it a slasher movie or another CW show. They just wanted to see the Winchesters deal with monsters from another property. Well, in Season 13, we finally got one in the episode Scooby Natural. If you haven't seen the show, then yes, there is an episode where characters get sucked into an episode of Scooby-Doo. That in and of itself is worthy of this list, but there's another layer to it when you look into Shaggy's voice actor, Matthew Lillard. Not only did this guy play Shaggy in the live-action Scooby-Doo movies, he's also been in a few legit horror movies, including the recent Five Nights at Freddy's. However, one of his most memorable roles was Stu Macher in Scream, and there's going to be a little Scream spoiler here in a second, so skip to this time code if you don't want to hear it. Ready? Since Stu was one of the killers, it means that Ghostface joins Freddy and Jason in the camp of slashers that sort of appeared in the show. So yeah, Lillard has played a few roles, but to me, he'll always be Dennis from 13 Ghosts. I love that movie, flaws and all. I'll fight anyone who tries to tear it down. Up next, we've got ourselves a super prolific scream queen. When it comes to dealing with monsters, Dee Wallace gives the Winchesters a run for their money. She's played women who had to deal with werewolves in The Howling, a rabid dog in Cujo, critters in Critters, mutant psychos in The Hills Have Eyes, just to name a few. This lady's been in a lot of scary movies. She added to her horror encounter list in the season episode Into the Mystic, where she plays a resident of a retirement home that's being stalked by a banshee. She actually plays a fairly big role in the episode, to the point where it can feel kind of weird if you don't know who she is. When I watched this episode with my wife, she literally asked me, "Is this lady famous or something?" She's not really into horror, so I can forgive this transgression. This time. I'm going to finish up this half of the list by mentioning actors who are best known for their roles in horror-adjacent TV shows. The biggest names in this category are definitely James Marsters and Charisma Carpenter, who both played major roles on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I haven't seen that show, so I can't really offer too much insight into that end of things. But if you're a fan, then why not check out the Supernatural Season 7 episode, Shut Up, Dr. Phil, where they played a husband and wife who are witches and who use dark magic in their marital spats. Next, we have what I believe to be the quickest cameo on this list. If you're a fan of The X-Files, then you'll know William B. Davis, who plays the show's main antagonist, the cigarette-smoking man. He's been in a bunch of other shows and movies, but The X-Files is definitely his most famous role. Now, you could argue that The X-Files isn't horror, but it's as close, if not closer, than Supernatural. Actually, the two shows are really similar, which could possibly be because some of the same people worked on both. That's probably why Davis made a quick cameo in the first season of Supernatural, playing a college professor in the episode Scarecrow. He also appeared as a prior in the 9th season of Stargate. That doesn't really have anything to do with horror, but I had to mention it because hallowed are the Ori. Next, it's time to talk about an actor who appeared in both Supernatural and The Walking Dead. No, not that one. I'm talking about Lauren Cohan. In The Walking Dead, she plays farm girl turned badass wife turned badass mom, Maggie, and she's now one of the main stars of one of the show's spin-offs. Outside of The Walking Dead, she starred in the weird haunted doll movie, The Boy, but I'm pretty sure Maggie is her most memorable role. Before she got the role as battle-hardened southern country girl, Cohan had a recurring role in the 3rd season of Supernatural, where she played Bella Talbot, a British thief who stole magical items to sell for big bucks. In a way, Bella is kind of the complete opposite of Cohan's zombie-killing persona. Maggie is a very grounded, salt-of-the-earth kind of person, while Bella fancies herself a high-society fancy pants. So now we're going to move on to actors for whom Supernatural is arguably their biggest role, but who some fans might not know appeared in other spooky movies and shows. Keep in mind, this is only roles in horror or horror-adjacent media. I know everyone in the main cast has been in other popular things, but only a few have had a noticeable presence in the scary genre. Also, again, there's a good chance that I'll miss something. Let's start with the main duo, Jared Padalecki and Jensen Ackles. 2005 was a pretty busy year for JP. Not only did he start his career as Sam Winchester, he also had roles in 2 other horror movies, Cry Wolf and House of Wax. In 2009, he starred in the Friday the 13th remake, making him one of the few actors who got to fight 2 different versions of Jason Voorhees, sort of. Jensen Ackles also starred in a 2009 horror movie remake, in this case, My Bloody Valentine 3D. Though I think that's the only role that really qualifies him for this list. The final Winchester to have a presence in the horror genre is John's actor Jeffrey Dean Morgan. A good chunk of my audience already knows that JDM's most prominent character outside of Supernatural is The Walking Dead's Negan, but what you may not know is that he also starred in 2 different horror films that both revolved around demonic possession, those being 2012's The Possession and 2021's The Unholy. Outside of those 3, there's not much to say about the members of Team Free Will. Jim Beaver had a minor role in the first Joyride movie, Mark Shepard was a Monster of the Week in an episode of The X-Files, and both he and Misha Collins had one-off roles in Charmed, but that's kind of it. However, several other reoccurring cast members had their own horror careers. Death's actor Julian Richings has been in a lot of stuff. In fact, according to Wikipedia, he's had over 225 roles. Most of them are minor or bit parts, but some have a bit more screen time. If you want to see him at his most undeath-like, check out The First Wrong Turn, where he plays insane mutant cannibal hillbilly, Three Fingers. He also had a starring role in the movie Anything for Jackson, where he plays a very polite Satanist. Weirdly, that's not his only satanic role. Richings also played the head of a devil cult in the bizarre yet fun show Todd vs. the Book of Pure Evil. Stephen Williams, who played Rufus, also played a few spooky characters in his time, but his most notable was probably the mysterious Mr. X from The X-Files, and Jason Voorhees' hunter, Creighton Duke, from the 9th Friday the 13th movie. The trickster, Richard Sprague Jr., has appeared in several scary movies. However, the most interesting one to me is 2017's Death House. His role in the movie is minor, but the film includes a bunch of horror icons, including Kane Hodder, Tony Todd, Dee Wallace, and Gunnar Hansen. There's no Robert Englund, but RSJ did get to work with him when he appeared in a few episodes of Freddy's Nightmare. The first actress to play Meg, Nikki Acox, had a leading role in a few scary movies, including Joyride 2, Jeepers Creepers 2, and 2008's weird werewolf movie Animals, which I think I might be the only person to have ever seen. Ruby's first actress, Katie Cassidy, had her own little scream queen career in the mid-2000s, with roles in When a Stranger Calls, as well as the remakes of A Nightmare on Elm Street and Black Christmas. Lastly, there's Frederick Lane, the guy who played Azazel in Season 2. This is another actor who's been in a lot of stuff, but some of his most prominent horror roles were as Frank from American Horror Story Asylum, and Perry from Killer Superdog movie Man's Best Friend. Alright, so I want to end this video by shouting at an actor whose name most people probably won't know, but whose face many of you will. Look at this dude. I'm guessing most of you don't know his name, but I bet a good chunk of y'all are thinking, oh yeah, I think I recognize him. But from where? Well, this is Lachlan Monroe, and you know what he's been in? He's been in fucking everything. Like Julian Richings, this dude has played over 100 roles, and while a good few of them are minor or bit parts, it's still really impressive. I know him best from Freddy vs. Jason and Scary Movie. He's also been in Charmed, Dracula 2000, The Predator, and White Chicks, which is basically horror. In Supernatural, he makes a brief appearance in Season 12 as a rich dude who Rowena is trying to schmooze. Look, he's not the biggest name in the business, but I don't know, I feel like if you've been in this many roles, you deserve a little recognition. So here's to you, Lachlan. I sure hope you're a decent guy and you don't make me look stupid here. But what do you guys think? I definitely missed someone, so let me know which names should have been in this video. I'll have more spooky, sexy, supernatural content for you soon, but for now, carry on.